The truth will set you free, but first it will shatter everything you thought you knew. Most people think anxiety means something is wrong with them, that they're broken, weak, or need to be fixed. But what if your anxiety is actually a sign that your awareness is working exactly as it should? What if your mind and body are simply reacting to a world that often feels dishonest, disconnected, and out of sync with what matters? When you become more conscious, more emotionally intelligent, more observant, you also become more sensitive to the things most people have learned to ignore. You notice when conversations feel fake. You feel drained by performative smiles, shallow goals, or living a life that doesn't reflect your values. That tension, that discomfort, is not a failure of your system. It's your nervous system waking you up and asking for something real. In psychology, we call this cognitive dissonance, when your internal truth starts clashing with the external world. It creates a pressure that feels like anxiety, but it's actually a sign you're becoming more self-aware, more aligned, and less willing to live on autopilot. You're not here to blindly follow the script. You're here to question it, to rewrite it, to build a life that reflects who you are, not who you were told to be. So if you feel uneasy, don't panic. You're not failing, you're waking up. And that's where real strength begins. Keep listening to that discomfort. It's not your enemy, it's your guide. Let's get started. Number 1. Anxiety is the price of awareness in a world that profits off your sleep. When you finally start seeing through the illusions, discomfort is inevitable. Let's unpack that. Imagine you've been asleep for years. Not literally, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You've been going through the motions, school, job, social media, chasing approval. Everything feels scripted. Then one day something snaps. You start asking real questions. Why am I doing this? Why does this feel fake? Why am I constantly tired and numb? That is the moment you begin to wake up. But waking up is not peaceful. It is uncomfortable. It rattles your nervous system because now you're not just living, you're noticing. You see how people wear masks just to survive the day. You hear the manipulation behind the marketing. You sense the emptiness in the goals you've been taught to chase. This new awareness is what many people call anxiety. But in truth, it's the nervous system reacting to a flood of suppressed truth. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said that freedom is a burden, because when you finally realize you have a choice, you also realize you are responsible for that choice. That's terrifying. And that is why awareness hurts. It strips away the comfort of ignorance. Psychology confirms this. Carl Jung taught that anxiety is often the psyche's way of trying to alert us that our outer life no longer matches our inner truth. When you suppress it, it grows louder. But when you listen to it, it can guide you to alignment. Take a man who suddenly feels exhausted by his high-paying job. On paper, he has everything. Inside, he is hollow. That discomfort is not failure. It's awakening. It's the realization that success without meaning is just another illusion. So yes, anxiety feels awful. But maybe that is because your soul is finally awake in a world built to keep you asleep. And that is not weakness. That is the beginning of power. Number 2. Being awake means recognizing your limits and how much you've been tolerating them. It's not weakness, it's clarity, and it burns. This line cuts deep because it speaks to something we all quietly live with, the weight of our own silence. Most people don't realize how much they've been putting up with until they start waking up. And when they do, it's not pretty. It's not peaceful. It stings. Think about it. For years, maybe even decades, you've tolerated people draining your energy. A job that suffocates your spirit, expectations that were never yours to begin with. You told yourself this is just life. Be grateful. Push through. Smile. But there's a moment, and it always comes, when your body says enough. Your sleep breaks down. Your mood shifts. Your chest feels tight. That's not weakness. That's self-awareness crashing through your defenses. From a psychological lens, this is called cognitive dissonance. The stress you feel when your actions are no longer in harmony with your values. You begin to realize that the version of you the world sees is not the one you really are. That recognition is what burns. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you finally stopped lying to yourself. In philosophy, Soren Kierkegaard described this feeling as the sickness unto death. Not physical death, but the internal suffering of living a life disconnected from your true self. And it hurts. Because now you see everything. The fake relationships, the compromises, the noise, and you can't unsee it. Take someone who always says yes to keep the peace. One day they say no, not loudly, just once, but it shakes them. Not because they were rude, but because they're not used to honoring their own boundaries. That pain they feel, that's clarity. That's growth. Being awake isn't glamorous. It means facing the truth and feeling the burn of everything you've been suppressing. But that pain, it's not the end. It's the start of something real. Number 3. Most people aren't overwhelmed because life is hard. They're overwhelmed because they've stopped lying to themselves. Waking up ruins the convenient narrative. Let's get real for a moment. Life is hard, yes. But for many people, what really overwhelms them isn't just the daily grind. It's the collapse of a story they've been telling themselves for years. A story like, I'm happy in this relationship, or this job gives me purpose, or if I just work harder, things will feel better. These stories offer comfort. They keep things tidy, but they aren't always true. And when those stories start falling apart, the mind goes into overdrive. Not because it cannot handle life, but because it now has to face it without the filter. That's what waking up feels like. You start seeing the truth about your choices, your patterns, your people. And that clarity is heavy. Not because you're weak, but because it costs a lot to be honest with yourself. Psychologist Carl Rogers talked about this. He said real change only happens when a person accepts themselves fully, not who they wish they were, but who they actually are. That moment of honesty is powerful, but it's also terrifying. Because once you admit the truth, you can't go back. You can't pretend not to know anymore. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called it the moment of the abyss. It's when everything you leaned on for security no longer holds. You look around and realize the life you built doesn't match who you've become. That's not depression. That's awakening. Take someone who's always been the responsible one in their family. One day they realize they're exhausted, bitter, and quietly resentful. They aren't overwhelmed because they're tired. They're overwhelmed because they've finally stopped pretending to be okay with carrying everyone. Truth strips away illusions. It doesn't always feel good, but it's the only place healing starts. And once you see clearly, you stop surviving. You start choosing. Number 4. Modern society pathologizes awareness. If you feel everything, you're anxious. If you numb yourself, you're stable. This hits at the core of something most people sense, but rarely say out loud. In today's world, being deeply aware, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, is treated like a problem. If you feel too much, you're labeled as overly sensitive. If you question things too often, you're seen as negative. And if you're emotionally raw or reactive, you're told you might have a disorder. But here's the twist. A lot of what we call anxiety today is actually emotional intelligence that hasn't found a healthy outlet. When you're tuned in, when you notice subtle shifts in people's tone, when you feel tension in a room before a word is spoken, that's not a malfunction. That's awareness. And yes, it can be overwhelming, especially in a culture that tells you to tune out and keep scrolling. Psychology professor Kazimierz Dabrowski introduced a theory called positive disintegration. He said that internal chaos, emotional sensitivity, and existential crises are often signs of growth, not breakdown. The very things society labels as unstable can be part of evolving into a more conscious, authentic self. Now think about it. If you go to work, suppress your emotions, nod at injustice, and stay emotionally flat, you're seen as composed. You're called professional. But if you feel overwhelmed by the hypocrisy, or the meaningless routines, or the weight of human suffering, you're anxious. You need a break, maybe even a prescription. This isn't an attack on mental health treatment. Therapy and medication can be life-changing. But let's be honest. Society often prefers people who are quiet, compliant, and comfortably numb. So it medicalizes awareness and praises disconnection as balance. You are not broken because you feel deeply. You are simply awake in a system that would rather you be asleep. Don't confuse sensitivity with weakness. In a numb world, the ones who still feel are the ones still alive. Number 5. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's reacting exactly as it should to chaos, exploitation, and spiritual emptiness. Let's not sugarcoat it. We live in a world that constantly asks too much from people while giving very little back in return. You're expected to stay productive even when you're exhausted, stay polite when you're mistreated, and stay calm while your boundaries are being crossed. And when your body starts to protest, racing heart, tight chest, sleepless nights, they call it a disorder. But what if that response isn't dysfunction at all? What if it's intelligence? Your nervous system is not a faulty machine. It's an ancient, brilliant survival system designed to keep you safe. When it senses danger, physical, emotional, or even moral, it goes into high alert. That fight or flight response is not just about running from tigers, it's about recognizing when something is off, when something doesn't align with your values or your truth. In psychology, this is connected to polyvagal theory, which explains how the nervous system constantly scans for safety or threat. If your environment feels unpredictable, disconnected, or fake, your body will tighten. That's not an overreaction. That's your body telling you that something around you is not safe or real. Philosophers like Viktor Frankl wrote about this in more subtle ways. He believed when people are deprived of meaning, their inner world begins to crumble. Not because they are weak, but because the soul cannot thrive in emptiness. So when you feel anxious or overstimulated in certain places, toxic workplaces, shallow relationships, empty routines, that's not illness. That's insight. Imagine a fire alarm going off in a burning building. Would you call the alarm broken? No, it's doing its job. The same goes for your nervous system. The real problem is not your anxiety. It's what your anxiety is trying to tell you. You're not weak, you're awake, and your body is trying to protect you from a world that's forgotten how to feel. Listen to it. Number 6. Awareness makes you notice how fake everything is. Fake smiles, fake goals, fake safety. That recognition doesn't come with peace. It comes with a scream. Waking up isn't some peaceful, candle-lit experience. It's raw, it's unsettling, and in many ways it feels like breaking. Not because you're falling apart, but because everything you used to believe is. At first, it's subtle. You start noticing the way people say, "I'm fine," with dead eyes. The way ambition sounds more like desperation, how much of your life has been about performing, for approval, for safety, for survival. You see how the world rewards those who can fake it best. Fake confidence in meetings, fake connection at parties, fake happiness on social media. It's all a show, and suddenly, you're not clapping anymore. That shift isn't peaceful. It's a scream inside your chest. A deep, guttural realization that you've been living a script, and worse, that everyone else is too. Philosophy calls this existential angst, the discomfort that arises when we confront the absurdity of life and realize how many of our beliefs were just inherited or imposed. Psychologist Rollo May said awareness is the start of freedom, but also of pain. Because once you see clearly, you can't pretend anymore. You can't chase what no longer feels real. You can't unsee the emptiness behind the mask. Take someone working in a job they once wanted. It paid well, looked impressive. But now they stare at spreadsheets, forcing a smile, pretending it still matters. When they finally admit the truth, that it feels hollow, it doesn't bring relief. It brings a crisis. But that crisis is honest, that scream is sacred. So no, awareness doesn't come softly. It doesn't pat you on the back, it rips the curtain down and demands you look. But in that scream, there's power. It's the first sound of your real self waking up. Number 7. You can't positive think your way out of reality. Awake people don't chase comfort. They chase what's real, even if it hurts. Let's be honest. The whole just think positive advice sounds good on a coffee mug, but it doesn't hold up when life gets real. When your heart is heavy, your job feels empty, or your relationships lack depth, slapping positive thoughts on top of that doesn't fix the root. It hides it. And that's the difference between staying asleep and waking up. Awake people, those who have really started to look beneath the surface, don't deny their pain. They study it. They ask why it's there. They stop avoiding discomfort and start confronting it, even when it shakes their foundation. Because they know chasing only comfort leads to numbness, not growth. Psychologist Carl Jung said it best. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's what toxic positivity often is. A distraction. It tells you to smile instead of speak up, to stay grateful instead of admit you're drowning, to manifest peace instead of confront chaos. But real peace comes after the storm, not by pretending it isn't there. Philosophically, the Stoics believed in seeing life exactly as it is, the beauty and the brutality, without flinching. That's what it means to be awake, to look life in the face without the need to sugarcoat it. Not because you're cynical, but because you're done pretending. Take someone who loses a job that was slowly killing their passion. They could say, "It's fine, everything happens for a reason." Or they could sit with the grief, the relief, the fear, and use it as fuel to find something real. That second path is harder, but it leads somewhere true. Awake people don't chase the easy answer. They chase meaning. And that kind of truth doesn't always feel good, but it sets you free. Number 8. Anxious people aren't broken. They're just refusing to keep dancing while the ship is sinking. Anxiety gets a bad reputation. It's seen as weakness, dysfunction, something to fix. But what if anxious people aren't malfunctioning? What if they're the ones paying attention? In a society that thrives on distraction, shallow optimism, and staying busy at all costs, anxiety is often the mind and body calling bullshit on the performance. While others keep smiling, nodding, and going through the motions, anxious people are the ones who've noticed the cracks in the foundation. They've felt the temperature shift. They hear the creaking of the hull while everyone else keeps dancing. This isn't just poetic. It's psychological. Anxiety is often a response to contradiction, the space between what we know deep down and what we're being told to accept. Carl Jung described neurosis as the inevitable result of trying to ignore the tension between our true self and our social persona. Anxious people live in that tension. They feel it in their chest, their thoughts, their sleep. Not because they're weak, but because they're awake. Philosophers like Krishnamurti argued that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. That means your discomfort might not be personal failure. It might be emotional honesty. Anxious people are often those who refuse to settle for lies. They can't keep pretending things are fine when their soul knows they're not. Take someone in a toxic job or a hollow relationship. Their friends might say, "You've got it good, just be grateful." But gratitude doesn't erase emptiness. And when that person starts to shake, spiral, or withdraw, they're not breaking down. They're waking up. So no, anxious people aren't broken. They're just done dancing to music that doesn't feel right. And in a world that loves denial, that kind of clarity is rare and powerful. Number 9. Anxiety is not a flaw to fix. It's a signal to decode. Ask what your body is trying to wake you up to instead of trying to sedate it. We've been conditioned to see anxiety as a problem. A mental glitch, a disorder to manage, something to suppress. But what if it's not a malfunction? What if it's a form of inner intelligence? Your body's way of saying, pay attention. Anxiety doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's often your nervous system reacting to something you haven't fully processed yet. It could be a relationship that drains you, a career that suffocates you, a lifestyle that's disconnected from your values. When the mind is in denial, the body keeps the score. It tightens, it shakes, it panics, not to punish you, but to wake you up. This is backed by real science. The field of somatic psychology, particularly the work of Bessel van der Kolk, shows how unprocessed emotions and unresolved experiences live in the body. Your anxiety might not be a chemical imbalance. It might be truth trying to surface through the noise. And here's where most people go wrong. Instead of asking why they're anxious, they jump to how to make it stop. They numb it with screens, substances, fake positivity, or even endless productivity. But numbing isn't healing, it's just muting the alarm, while the fire still burns. Think of it like a check engine light in your car. Would you smash the dashboard to make it disappear? Of course not. You'd look under the hood. The same goes for anxiety. It's not asking for a distraction. It's asking for your attention. So next time anxiety rises, pause, get curious. Ask what it's pointing to. What truth have you been avoiding? What part of your life is no longer in alignment? You are not broken. Your body is trying to protect you, not from life, but from living it in a way that quietly destroys you. Number 10. Being awake strips away false control. The world is messier and less fair than you wanted to believe. No wonder you feel unsteady. Waking up, truly waking up, doesn't feel like some glorious enlightenment moment. It feels like the floor collapsing. You start to realize how much of your sense of safety was built on illusions. The belief that if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. That if you're kind, people will treat you well. That if you follow the rules, life will make sense. But awareness doesn't let you keep those comforting lies. It tears them down. You begin to see that life isn't always fair. That effort doesn't always equal outcome. That bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to those who manipulate the system. You see corruption, performative morality, hollow institutions, and you can't unsee it. That's why awareness feels so shaky. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because something is finally real. What you're feeling is not instability. It's truth disrupting the illusion of control you were taught to rely on. Psychologically, this relates to what's called cognitive restructuring, when your core beliefs are challenged or rewritten. It's not a gentle process. The brain has to rewire itself to make room for new truths. This can trigger fear, doubt, and disorientation. It feels like falling, because in a way, it is. You're falling out of an old story. Philosophers like Simone de Beauvoir and Camus talked about this kind of awakening as part of facing the absurd. It's the recognition that life has no tidy resolution, no built-in justice. And yet we're still here, still choosing meaning, still showing up. So yes, you feel unsteady, because certainty just died. But what's being born is far more honest. The world may be messier than you thought, but it's also more real. And in that rawness, you can finally start to live without pretending. In final words, let's be clear, what you're feeling is not weakness, it's awareness. And in today's world, awareness can feel like a burden. You notice more, you feel more, you question more. While others are comfortable staying distracted, you're trying to make sense of things that don't add up. That doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means your mind is no longer willing to lie to itself just to feel safe. From a psychological point of view, this is part of what we call existential anxiety. It's the discomfort that shows up when you start asking deeper questions. When you're no longer satisfied with routine, surface-level goals, or scripted happiness. This anxiety isn't pathological, it's a sign of growth. It's your mind evolving beyond passive survival into active awareness. Being awake in a world that encourages sleep is lonely, it's uncomfortable, but it's also powerful. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer be easily controlled. You can no longer be sold things you don't need, or made to follow paths that betray who you really are. So here's your reminder, you are not broken, you are becoming. You're learning how to live without illusion, to move through uncertainty with honesty, and to stay grounded even when the world feels upside down. Keep going. Not everyone will understand your path, and that's fine. You're not here to blend in. You're here to build a life that actually feels real. And that takes courage, the kind most people never develop. But you already started. Stay awake, keep walking, keep questioning, keep trusting that your discomfort is not your enemy. It's the signal that you're alive in a world that's half asleep. Stay sharp, stay honest, stay awake. Thank you for watching, and see you in another episode.